There are some additional aspects that I want to talk to you about the Ansible core networking module. So this is things like iOS underscore fax, EOS underscore command, NXOS underscore config, Junos underscore command, and Junos underscore config. So let's talk about what if you're using a situation where you're using an SSH key. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that as test user, I can SSH into this Cisco router just using the SSH key file located in my home directory .sh test underscore RSA. So if I do an SSH -I, I say .sh test underscore RSA, and I say that the user is test user. And I forgot to specify my device I want to connect to, which is this router here. So on that Cisco router, I had to set up that SSH key properly. But once it's set up properly at the networking device, I can go ahead and manually SSH into it, not using any username and password. Instead, I'm using an SSH key. Now I can also take advantage of this in my playbook. So here I have a playbook. I have my host, which is that same Cisco 1 router. Now notice my provider. I'm specifying the host is this from the inventory, which is just going to be cisco1.twb-tech.com. My username is test user, and I'm pointing to that same key file just like I did when I did it manually. Here I'm executing iOS underscore fax, and I'm using that creds provider, and let's see what that looks like. And you can see that I'm successfully able to SSH in using that key and able to obtain the fax. Now I could similarly add some sort of iOS underscore command module. Add the commands argument like show IP int brief. Go ahead and execute that. Make sure that that still works properly. And you can see it did execute properly. If we added the -VVV argument, we should see this show IP int brief output come back to us, which we do, shown here. Okay, so we can use SSH keys if they're set up between the device and the Ansible control machine. Now what if you need to use an enable secret? So let's look at this. So here I have a test1 user. I'm using the same password that we've been using throughout this class to connect, but notice I am not in enable mode here. I will not be able to execute show run from the privilege level that this test1 user has. Now, you might need to set up the test1 user on PyNet router 1 or PyNet router 2 if you want to experiment with using enable mode. All I did here, and the enable password is just our standard password. All I did here is manually add this user, and I gave him a privilege level of 1. So as opposed to giving a privilege level of 15, I gave a privilege level of 1. Now let's look at how we do that in a playbook. So here you can see I created my provider. I'm using the Cisco 1 for the host, username test1, our standard password. Here I have iOS fax, iOS command. Now notice this iOS command is going to fail because this test1 only has privilege level 1. So all I'm demonstrating to you in this first playbook is that it's not working properly, that it cannot execute the show run. Fax works fine because it doesn't require anything that doesn't need anything that's in privilege level 15, so it works fine, but the show run command fails. Now if we go into this iOS authorize to playbook, you'll see I've added the authorize equal true keyword, and I've specified the enable secret using this auth pass argument. In this case, the secret is exactly the same as the test1 password, but you could have specified a different authorization password here. We'll go ahead and execute this playbook. And I just want to show one other thing. We're still running show run here, so we have to get into a higher privilege level. So here we're getting into enable mode. So let's verify whether that works or not. Here we see it executing. Fax works. iOS command works. And we can see our show run was successful. If we add the VVV, we should be able to see the show run output. And there you can see that show run came back to us. So we're able to use SSH keys for authentication. We're able to also get into enable mode if we need to.